Good evening. I'm very happy to be invited 2 days before I leave Los Angeles for Tokyo. In fact, yesterday until 2 o'clock in the morning, my wife and I were packing. And this morning, all the, the carton boxes were gone for shipment. So I'm very happy to be here this evening. You will have soon the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And 9/11 certainly changed lots the United States and the world. But I think Japan's March 11, this disaster, earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear, this March 11 has been changing Japan profoundly. We don't know yet to what extent this disaster will have a long-term impact on Japan. But certainly, we will suffer for the years to come. And also, Japan will be transforming in the years to come. And we have received, since March 11, a huge amount of assistance, solidarity, help, sympathy from around the world. We are so grateful to the people around the world for their generosity. And it is, I think, our responsibility to share our experiences with the people so that we can learn some lessons from this disaster. First of all, we have to recognize that this earthquake and tsunami was huge. In terms of magnitude, it is 9.0. And when you see Haiti, magnitude is 7.1. And between 7.1 and 9.0, there is 1,000 times difference. 1,000 times more powerful as earthquake, which hit the Japan on March 11. But when you see the fatalities, almost 20,000 people died or missing, but only 700 were really killed by the earthquake itself. The majority of the victims were of tsunami. And that tsunami was as high as 60 feet, in average from 30 to 60 feet tsunami, which hit the coast of eastern Japan. That nobody, including seismologists and all the scientists, nobody could predict such a big earthquake with tsunami would hit this region. But the first lesson we have to learn from this disaster is that we should have been humble enough to study more about the history and to learn more from the past. Because, as you know, the Eastern Asian countries like China, Korea, and Japan, we have a long history and we have written histories. And according to some old documents in Japan, in 9th century, 849, there was a big earthquake which hit this region with huge tsunami. Very few scientists knew that, although there was a record, but not many people paid enough attention to that historical fact. But after this earthquake, many people seriously started studying the past events. And now we know that almost every 1,000 years, this region has been hit by big earthquake and tsunami, at least 4 or 5 times. So if we had been a little more careful in paying all attention to the past records, we should have predicted big earthquake would hit not every decade, but every 1,000 years. And another lessons that we should have learned more carefully was that in this region, there are several stone monuments on the hill, which says, below this stone monument, you should not build house. Because in the past, there have been big tsunamis, and the waves came up to the 30 feet or more. So the people living there and who suffered from that tsunami left stone monument to give lessons to the people, to the generations coming later. But some communities respected those old sayings, but some didn't. And they built the housing and factories and everything along the shore, and they were swept out. So the first lesson that we should draw from this disaster is that we should have been humble enough to study more about the past. Although we were not very well prepared for big tsunami, we were fairly well prepared for big earthquake. For instance, in Tohoku area, 27 high-speed trains were in operation at the time of earthquake. But there was no derailment because the high-speed rail in Japan has had very advanced devices or technologies which automatically detect the first wave of tremor and stop immediately the whole high-speed rail train system. So that system worked very well, and no derailment took place. And on the basis of our past experiences, the Japanese government has strengthened building code. So today we have lots of high-rises and lots of modern buildings, but there were very few high-rises and all kinds of buildings which have been destroyed by this earthquake, despite very strong tremor. So on the tsunami side, our preparedness was not enough. But on the other side of the earthquake, our technology proved to be fairly good against earthquake. And the second thing that we recognized once again is the importance of immediate relief efforts. And this time, different from previous the earthquake and the disaster, Japanese self-defense forces have been fully mobilized. This 100,000 self-defense forces were mobilized. That is the half of Japanese self-defense forces. We don't have so many soldiers, but half of our soldiers were mobilized this earthquake. And more amazingly for me, almost 700,000 Japanese people, particularly young people, volunteered to help the Tohoku region. That is something fairly positive despite this whole disaster. And the third thing is Operation Tomodachi. Tomodachi means friendship in Japanese. And Operation Tomodachi is the joint operation between Japanese self-defense forces and the US forces in Japan. US has a very strong military presence in East Asia, in particular in Japan. Marines, Air Force, and you have 7th Fleet home port to Yokosuka, and some ground forces. And all four forces were mobilized this time, and 20,000 personnel participated in this Operation Tomodachi. And that was a great success, and the Japanese people much appreciated. And we have received so many support from around the world. Prime Minister Kan, former Prime Minister, sent a thank you letter to all the countries. And in that letter, he used one Japanese word, kizuna. Kizuna means the bond of friendship. And it is really this kizuna, bond of friendship, that many Japanese felt all through this ordeal. But the damages to Tohoku region are very, very serious. And before this earthquake and tsunami, frankly speaking, my image of Tohoku was just a rural area, the agricultural fishery area. But in fact, in Tohoku, there are a number of important manufacturing and materials factories and facilities. And we noticed that today's world is linked to each other very closely through the so-called supply chain. For instance, one factory in Tohoku, which was damaged by this earthquake, manufactured the very small the computer chips. And those chips were indispensable for car manufacturing. So almost all Japanese car manufacturing industry had been seriously disturbed by the damage of this one factory. Or another example, there is again a small factory in Tohoku area which makes pigments for car. And that special pigments are used by the American automobile industry. So certain types of American cars cannot, could not be produced because of lack of these pigments. So now the world economy has been so closely linked together. We once again recognize this interdependence of the world economy. And this supply chain issue has been almost repaired, because the majority of the factories were back to the operation. But when you see the extreme right, there are certain percentage of manufacturing industries and material industries where no resumption, the resumption of the operation is not foreseen. That means that those industries, those factories, those manufacturing sites were completely destroyed. And the maybe owners or investors just have left the business. So unemployment issue in Tohoku area is very, very serious. But I think this supply chain issue, as I said, is over. So no more serious impact on Japanese industries and the world economy. Japanese government has taken the several fiscal budgetary policies, budgetary measures to restore the Tohoku region. We have already had the first supplementary budget, second supplementary budget, and now in the under the new political leadership, we will have the third supplementary budget, which is much more significant than the two previous ones, which will be used to reconstruct the disaster areas. But how to reconstruct? That is a very difficult question, because more than 200 the miles squares, 200 200 square miles were completely destroyed, and all the communities were swept away. So how to reconstruct Tohoku is a very serious and difficult issue. And the government asked the several people, professors and the governors of the 3 affected prefectures and some other specialist experts to submit the basic idea how to reconstruct. And these are the important points. First point is the concept of disaster reduction. Before this big earthquake and tsunami, our concept of protecting our land against earthquake or tsunami is to try to protect completely, try to prevent the damage from happening. So that, for instance, we construct huge breakwaters along the sea coast, so that the tsunami cannot reach the land. But we now understand that even if we build big breakwater, we cannot prevent big tsunami from going over and hit the land. Because once in every 1,000 years, maybe more often, we will have this big earthquake and big tsunami of 60 feet. So to prevent 60 feet tsunami from coming to the seashore, we have to construct huge concrete objects. And it is not feasible. Technically may be feasible, but fiscally it's not feasible. It costs too much. So now the idea is disaster reduction. What is this disaster reduction? For instance, we build the breakwater, but maybe big tsunami will go over and hit the land. So we will build second breakwater. It's not breakwater, maybe the highway or railway, so that beyond that railway or highway, the tsunami's power will be diminished. So between breakwater and highway or railway, we just construct port facilities or some lands, some fields for agriculture. But nobody really live in that area. And after this highway or railway, we may build the strong buildings for factories or for the manufacturing facilities. And beyond that, we will construct housing, areas. So that although big tsunami can hit the land, can come to the seashore, but we can reduce considerably the human damages. So that is the concept of disaster reduction. And the second idea is that consider this, the reconstruction as a catalyst for the revitalization of Japan. As I said, my image of Tohoku is agricultural, rural, fishery area. And in plus, Tohoku is also the aging region. Population is aging. Many elderlies are living, not so many young people. So how to revitalize that kind of area? If we are successful in revitalizing the Tohoku, I think we can also revitalize Japan, because Japan as a whole is aging rapidly, as you know. So we are trying to utilize this reconstruction, the effort as a kind of catalyst for the revitalization of whole Japan. So that is the basic idea about how we face these reconstructions. And the third element is reconstruction open to the world. As I said, through this earthquake and the tsunami disaster, we have learned that we are living together with the world. We are connected to the world. So we should be open to the world. So openness is another very important idea which makes this, the reconstruction projects more meaningful, not only for Tohoku, but for Japan as a whole. So this is the idea on which we are now trying to reconstruct Tohoku. But the question is, we need money. How we can secure enough money to reconstruct Tohoku? We have already spent 50 billion US dollars for the first supplementary and 25 billion US dollars for the second supplementary. But maybe the third one, we need 125 or maybe 150 50 billion US dollars, more than 10 trillion Japanese yen. And how to finance it? The only way is to issue the treasury bond. But already Japan is heavily indebted. Our debt is twice as big as our annual GDP. So we cannot simply issue our treasury bond to finance this reconstruction effort. So sooner or later, we have to raise tax. And that is, I think, one of the most difficult but important political agenda items that the new Japanese government has to face. Now I talk about nuclear. This nuclear disaster will have probably very serious and longer impacts on Japan in very many ways. But first of all, I'd like to explain the current situation. As you know, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plants were severely damaged by the tsunami. There were 4 reactor units, and the 3 reactors were in operation at the time of earthquake, but the 4th one was not in operation. But the spent fuel kept in spent fuel pool for the 4th unit. So we have 3 reactors and 4 spent fuel pools. Those are the issues. And those 3 reactors of Fukushima Daiichi were all severely damaged. There were melting down of the fuel. How serious that melting down was, we don't know yet, because the radiation level is so high within the reactor, so we cannot go in to see exactly what the situation is. But maybe a little later we can do it, but actually we don't know. But at least thanks to all the efforts, those 3 reactors are now in the process of so-called cold shutdown. Cold shutdown is a very stable condition. The temperature of the reactor will be around 100 degree centigrade. So it's a boiling level, but as a reactor, it is stable. There is no further melting down, no explosion, no serious risk. So now the objective is to realize this cold shutdown as soon as possible. And now we expect that early next year, we can realize this cold shutdown. And for the spent fuel pools, we have already been quite successful in the establishing circulating cooling system. And thanks to this circulating cooling system, the temperature of spent fuel pools went down around 30 to 42 degrees centigrade. So it's quite okay, no risk anymore. So maybe soon we can remove spent fuel from this pool to be conserved in a safer way. And when we tried to cool the reactors and the spent fuel pools, we poured lots of water on the units. And those waters are highly contaminated. So we are now trying to decontaminate waters, decontaminate the water to be reused for the cooling system. But at the same time, we are doing everything so that we can prevent the contamination of soil because of this contaminated water. So, generally speaking, Fukushima Daiichi power plant is going to be under control, and the release of radioactive substance has been reduced dramatically in the last 5 months. But the problem is already for the initial first week of the disaster, huge amount of radioactive substances were released to the air and landed and contaminated certain soils. So there are still areas where the people should evacuate and cannot go back to. And the government is working to reduce the contamination of soil by removing the upper part of the soil and so on. But it takes time and money. And still thousands of the residents are staying in shelters, or staying in the relatives' house or hotels, and they are having lots of difficulties. But this nuclear, personally, I'm not so much worried about Fukushima Daiichi. Of course, we have to do all the necessary things so that the residents, people, can come back to their home, and it is very important. But I'm more worried about the impact of this nuclear accident on our energy policy. That is the public opinion polls conducted by several Japanese national newspapers. And the results are almost identical. Now the 60 to 70% of Japanese hope that we will eliminate nuclear powers. That is a very sharp contrast to the similar public polls conducted several years ago. The majority of Japanese were at that time in favor of utilization of nuclear power. This left column shows how much we actually depend on nuclear as an energy, electricity source. 26% of our electricity comes from nuclear. And last year, before this earthquake, tsunami, nuclear disaster, the Japanese government decided mid and long-term energy policy. And according to this energy strategy, by 2030, that's the right column, by 2030, we will further increase our dependence on nuclear up to 50% of our electricity mix. That was the strategy last year. And the majority of Japanese people supported this strategy. But after the earthquake, as you see, 60 to 70% of Japanese hope that we will reduce and eliminate nuclear power in the future. And as Professor Peck said, the former Prime Minister Kan took a very clear position to eliminate nuclear in the future. And recently, new Prime Minister Noda made a public announcement that he too seeks for eliminating nuclear in the future. But his way of saying is that he said that it will be difficult to construct new nuclear power plants. So that means that nuclear power plants has the life cycle. And 30 to 40 years, nuclear power plants has to shut down. So that means that in Japan, if we don't construct new nuclear power plants, that means that we will eliminate in the future the nuclear power. Actually, we have 54 nuclear units. And among 54, only 15 are in operation. Because the all nuclear power plants follow very strict regulations. And one of the regulations is that every 13 months, nuclear power unit should be stopped for regular check. And now the Japanese local communities, the local governments and municipalities are so worried about the safety of nuclear. After the regular checking, resumption it becomes very difficult. So actually only 15 nuclear power plants are in operation among 54. And if no approval is given to the suspended nuclear power plants, one after another, the nuclear plants in operation have to have that regular check. So by the summer of next year, no nuclear power plants will be in operation in Japan. But the problem is, of course, we understand, and I myself am worried about the impact of health of the radiation. But we are already dependent on 26% of our electricity on nuclear. So if we stop operations one after another, and the next summer, no nuclear power plant in operation, how can we ensure the enough electricity supply to our life, to our industry, and so on? So we need to think about very seriously how to satisfy two requirements. One is safety. One is industrial and daily needs of electricity supply. So that is another very difficult task of the new government. And personally, I think the best way is to ensure the maximum safety of existing nuclear power plant and try to introduce more bold measures to encourage the utilization and the development of the renewable energy so that we can smoothly moving from the current situation towards the energy mix which depends much less on nuclear in the future. But easy to say, but very difficult to implement. So that is another very serious challenge facing Japan today. Since I came to Los Angeles, this Prime Minister Noda is the 5th Prime Minister. I've been here for 3 years and 4 months. Can you imagine? So now the difficult question is, you name all the prime ministers in the last 6 years. We have 6 prime ministers. Every year we have new prime minister. And the number of foreign ministers is more than prime minister. I don't know how many foreign ministers, but now the new foreign minister is Mr. Koichiro Genba, very young guy in his mid-40s, and the prime minister is in mid-50s. Both are younger than I. That means because of the frequent change of our leadership, our political leadership become much younger. 20, 30 years ago, I cannot imagine that the prime minister is in the mid-50s and the foreign minister in his mid-40s. So although there are negative aspects of this, negative impacts and the consequences of this frequent change of political leadership, but I think Japan is now in the time of transformation. You have heard that the lost decades of Japan. From mid-1990s, our banking system suffered from bad loans, and the Japanese economy went into long stagnation and deflation. So we are still suffering from these economic problems. But at the same time, this, the last 15 to 20 years, at the time that Japanese political system has been changing a lot. For many years, since 1955, we had very stable, LDP-led government, which lasted until 2008, or 2009, I'm sorry. And 2009, we had the very important majority changes. And now the new government, led by DPJ, Democratic Party of Japan, is responsible for Japanese politics. So in the last 10 to 15 years, or 15 to 20 years, we are going through very dramatical changes, both in economy and politics. And many Japanese feel that this time comes to end soon. And this Prime Minister Noda, when he was chosen as Prime Minister, according to the national newspaper's public poll, the approving rate of new Prime Minister was very high, 60%, or some newspapers, the report says 70%. Why Japanese people, expect such highly towards this new government? That is because we are really, getting tired of frequent changes of our leaders, and we hope that this government lasts longer, and this government takes serious policy decisions, so that we can ensure the sustainability of our economy, sustainability of our national healthcare pension system, and we can reduce little by little our heavy dependence on the treasury bonds. So that is, I think, the expectation or the hope of the people which support this, the launching of this new government. And I will go back to Tokyo soon, and I will come back to Japanese Foreign Ministry. And I continue to work on our diplomacy with the United States. And I sincerely hope that this new government will succeed in bringing Japan back to the more vibrant society and economy. The earthquake, tsunami, and the nuclear disaster has had really severe impact on Japanese economy, society, and mentality of Japanese. But there are some positive sides of this national calamity. One is the awareness of the people. Japanese people are now more aware of the fact that we are connected to the world. We have been so much helped by the people around the world. So we will help others. We will further contribute to the international community. And second positive consequence of this calamity is that the Japan-US alliance is very important. When I showed the numbers of the US soldiers participating in Operation Tomodachi, it's not just a number, but it's a heart. The US soldiers, when they were in disaster areas, they didn't have any problems with the victims in the region, because they are stationed in Japan. They are living in Japan, and they have friends in Japan. So they know, Japanese people. And the Japanese know also that US soldiers are with us for many years. So there is a kind of solidarity and a kind of unity between Japanese people and US servicemen and women. That is, I think, the alliance. And many Japanese people are really aware of the importance of the alliance between Japan and the United States. I think that is a very good positive. And the third positive issue is that, as I said, more than 600,000 Japanese people, particularly young Japanese people, volunteered to help the Tohoku region. Japanese young people, compared to Americans, are not so socially, in my view, are not so socially aware. But this natural disaster has really made them aware of their existence as the member of the community or member of the society. So that changes the mentality of particularly younger Japanese, so that we can create a more cohesive community in Japan. So I think despite all the problems, all the difficulties we are still facing, we will overcome this disaster, and we will come back stronger and more eager to contribute to the world. So that is the end of my lecture. But I'm sorry, one more thing. I have to mention this because you should also understand the difficulty of Japanese politicians. It's just like the United States. The US problems and the Japanese problems are very similar. Of course, the scale may be different, but we are facing a number of issues of the same nature. This is again the same type of issue. We have two houses of the Diet, Parliament, And one is controlled by governing majority. But another house is controlled by opposition groups. So it is very difficult for politicians of the governing party or the prime minister cabinet to pass the necessary legislation. There is no filibuster in Japan, but without using filibuster, already our upper house, the DPJ, governing party, is minority, and opposition party is majority. So if opposition party as a group vote against no legislations will pass in the Diet. So this new government of Noda and Foreign Minister Gemba and others, ministers, have to also face that political reality. So I hope that you will continue to follow Japanese politics, because although not so many newspapers in the United States report the details of Japanese politics, but I think I have a gut feeling that this year and the next year will be very important for Japan, and important things will happen.